What's up, everybody? Pat Leonard here from the Talking Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. This is Talking Ball Live. We are back in action previewing the NFL Combine. I'm headed to Indianapolis tomorrow, Monday, February 24th. We are here on Sunday evening, February 23rd. A few days before my birthday. I always end up celebrating my birthday either at or just around the NFL Combine. It's always an exciting time, a lot of buzz, a lot of rumors, a lot of reports, a lot of action in the NFL, in my life in general. So thrilled to be spending some of this time with you guys. I have a drink in hand tonight. I know I've been rocking some water in recent live chats, and I think I'm going to get back to sipping something nice here. Can't say that the Sunday night live chat prior to a 6-day trip to Indianapolis is popular in the Leonard household, but really thrilled to be here with you all talking Giants, NFL, prospects, NFL Combine, answering all your questions, of course, starting obviously with the Matthew Stafford rumors. Aaron Rodgers talking about what's coming down the pike on the quarterback market. Some of the biggest names moving the needle so far as we creep up into these backroom conversations, these corner bars, these steakhouses of Indy where the rumors and the conversations and the information start flying. It's always a really fascinating time. I'm going to drop some nuggets on some prospects I think that are worthwhile to watch going into the week for Giants fans. And if you're a fan of a different NFL team out there, definitely willing to answer what I feel like your team's needs are, where they should be looking, which prospects to keep an eye on out in Indianapolis. I'll be there talking to Joe Shane when he goes up to the podium. I believe he's scheduled for 10 a.m. on Tuesday. So that we'll be looking forward to that as Shane speaks. And this will be the first time he has spoken publicly since Saquon Barkley and the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And also since we've heard, obviously, the noise rattling around about Matthew Stafford. Will the Giants draft a quarterback instead? Which direction will they go in? Will the Rams actually part with a quarterback like that? And before I get to your questions, and obviously I see Jacob saying, let's go. Long time no see, Pat. Joey B says, what's good, fellas? You guys are here. We're rocking. We're rolling. We're ready to go. I definitely want to start with what my take on the Matthew Stafford situation is at this moment. I think the best information and insight I can give you is that, and I'm sure you understand by now, listening to reports, that Matthew Stafford's agent has received permission to speak to other teams, talking about what a parameter of a contract could look like elsewhere. That obviously indicates, throws up the flag, throws up those flares in the sky, that a Stafford trade is possible. It also, though, can indicate that the Rams are confident that as Stafford and his agent have those conversations, that the deals that he will be offered on the market with other teams, whether it's the Giants or somebody else, will not be out of the Rams' price range. You could say that that would be a way of letting other teams set the market for you. And so, like, I noticed Dan Duggan, a colleague of mine at The Athletic, mentioning that, that sometimes teams might balk at working a contract out with Stafford because then the Rams could say, yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. We'll sign you to that. Right. And that way they don't go above market for what the market has been set outside for Stafford. So there's a lot of different ways this could go. My best read on this, my best information on this, and obviously it's still fairly murky, but my strong opinion is that a Stafford trade somewhere is a very real possibility. I do think the Giants are players in this until we find out they are not. And what I mean by that is you look at the quarterback options and the Giants scenarios and the pressure that Joe Shane and Brian Dable are under. Which door do you want to pick? Let's just hypothetically say the three doors are a veteran like Jameis Winston for cheap and drafting a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, maybe waiting until Kirk Cousins gets released by the Atlanta Falcons and trying to sign him rather than having to trade assets, or trading for a player like Matthew Stafford? Honestly, I think the answer to that question depends on who you are, depends on your perspective. If you're a fan who feels like enough of this trying to look for quick fixes, we're not going to be good anyway. Let's just continue to take our medicine, get younger, draft a franchise quarterback for the future, and build and develop, then obviously you're picking door number one in that scenario. But if you live in the real NFL world, like Brian Daboll is going into this season, you need to be competitive right out of the gate. And also, Matthew Stafford is a top tier quarterback still at this moment. Will he be that in 2026? Who knows? But as we sit here and now, if you're Brian Daboll and you're Joe Schoen and you're saying we have to put a competent and competitive and winning product on the field immediately, it is obvious that he is the biggest name and most favorable option to do that right out of the gate in 2025. So you start with that. You start with the fact that Stafford really, his potential desire to play elsewhere is related to wanting to get one more payday. And a payday will come if the Rams aren't going to give it to him from a team that is more desperate. The Giants fall into that category. Now, this does not mean the Rams won't re-sign Stafford. The Rams have to understand that they instantly become a worse team if they get rid of Matthew Stafford, right? They were one play away from nearly beating the eventual Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. They know how valuable Stafford is to them as well. We talked to Adam Schefter last week, and he said that the Rams' priority still was to get something done with Matthew Stafford themselves. They understand his value as well as anybody, arguably better. What I have found fascinating in my conversations around the league is that Matthew Stafford's departure could open the door to a fascinating scenario. My understanding is that not only is Aaron Rodgers an option for the LA Rams, but Aaron Rodgers would love to play there. Like that's where he prefers. And Aaron Rodgers' desire to play in Los Angeles, if it's going to be available to him, you could look at this two ways. Does Aaron Rodgers know/think that there's going to be an opportunity to play for the LA Rams, right? That's a possibility. Another possibility, though, is Aaron's working an angle just like anybody would in business. He's laying the groundwork potentially as a guy that the Giants are moving on from. He still wants to play. What are the options out there? Probably not as ample as he would like them to be. If he has other options, are they more like the Tennessee Titans or the Vegas Raiders, if that even is an option? So rewinding it now back, is Aaron Rodgers simply just understanding where the potential opportunity may lie? Great coaching staff, offensive head coach, good roster, great number one receiver, a retooled defense, a really good GM, a team that's won a Super Bowl recently. It's out west where Aaron Rodgers, you have to think most likely is headed one way or another if he has his choice. So there's potential for both. Aaron Rodgers may have an inkling or an understanding or a sniff of the fact that there could be change coming with the Rams, and therefore maybe eyeing that as the clear best option for a quarterback looking for let's slide in and go. And we're going to look for a playoff berth again. And there's that opportunity. Or is he just playing the odds? That's possible too. Now, if you're the Rams, is Aaron Rodgers your choice if Matthew Stafford gets dealt? And I think you're probably trying to get a young quarterback in that case, right? Because you're not getting better in the here and now. Is it a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal with Aaron Rodgers? That's essentially a 1-year deal plus drafting a quarterback or trying to acquire a young quarterback, in return in that Stafford trade. And then Rodgers with the young QB being groomed to take over. There's a lot of different ways this could break out. Of course, we've seen the Vikings with the odds makers kind of laying it on thick that the Vikings even have a better chance of landing Matthew Stafford than the Giants do. That's the Vegas odds on that. That brings me obviously to the sponsors that I'm super grateful for here at Talking Ball with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network and on my YouTube channel, PL on NFL. And as we started this chat, we were only a handful of subscribers short of 4,000, which if you guys, the day oneers here, like Jacob, Joey B, G-Man, everybody who's here in the chat, you day oneers here, you know that that's a big number for us to get to given where we started and that we're not stopping, after doing our week on Radio Row in New Orleans, headed to the Combine coming up. Have a great episode coming up tomorrow. I'm going to have Benny Fowler, our regular guest, former NFL receiver, and also Allen Robinson, the NFL wide receiver, most recently of the Detroit Lions, Pro Bowler, free agent coming up here. They're going to join me on the podcast, and we're going to talk about their shared NFL Combine experience going back to when they were both coming out of college. They were friends growing up. One went to Michigan State, one Penn State, coming out of the Big Ten, going to the NFL Combine. They're going to take us kind of inside what it was like, what that Combine is like for players, that experience, and get us primed for what we're going to see coming this week. So looking forward to that. But it wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. MyBookie obviously is one of them. And if you tailed me all season, you won almost 55% of your bets, including down the stretch. We really finished with a bang at the Super Bowl. Eagles money line, the over in the game, Devontae Smith anytime touchdown, Saquon Barkley 25 carries, cashed in all the way across the board on those, gave those all out publicly. And if you're looking for March Madness bets, if you're looking for a way to play as the Masters is coming up, it's nonstop NBA and NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs coming up. You're going to want to go to MyBookie, and you're going to want to use our promo code PATSPICKS, and you're going to get a 50% match all the way up to a $2,000 initial deposit at MyBookie. So it's bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. And really, I had a blast partnering with MyBookie throughout the season, through the Super Bowl here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. It's been great. I've experienced like a whole nother side of the business, but also I think showing you guys I can bring some value there too. So looking forward to that and really continuing to grow. Also, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. You guys know Boom Chaga well. Boom Chaga is a natural extract that can lower cholesterol. It's a supplement. You can pour it in your coffee, water, tea. Can lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. If you go to boomchaga.com today and place your first order, you will get a 25% discount on your first subscribe and save order if you just use that discount code TalkinBall25, or as you see it here on the screen, there is a QR code for you to use that you can get that 25% discount. So reminder, that is boomchaga.com. It gives me kind of like a post-workout like energy boost. It is loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And I told you guys this when I came back from New Orleans. Man, oh man, people love this product. I'm telling you, this is not me shilling. This is not me being phony. Like, honestly, I don't promote products I don't believe in. And Boom Chaga, this mushroom supplement, this super drink, takes the cake. It's got some new packaging, as you can see over my shoulder here. You guys will love this product if you try it. I promise you. There were even some people on Radio Row who were stopping and getting free sample packets instead of having their coffee that day. They were just taking the packet, putting it in a cup of water, or even drinking it right from the little packet that they had, and then they were off on their way. So that's boomchaga.com, and use TalkinBall25 or that QR code on my screen, and you'll get 25% off your first order on the subscribe and save option. You don't have to stay subscribed. I think you will, but you don't have to stay subscribed. You just click it off, and no harm, no foul after that first order. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. A specialty coffee concentrate. It's great for an espresso martini mixer. It's also a 10-second way to make a great hot or cold coffee. That's estate98.com/talkinball. and you'll get an 80% discount order there if you just go to that link and order a State 98 coffee. And last but not least, very grateful to Sal Loretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. They keep me looking right. I'll have some of my fits going at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis as well. It's luxury menswear and the best tailoring that money can buy. Go to a Sal Loretta, tell them Pat sent you. Appreciate all our sponsors. As we roll into our chat, Jacob starts us off, says a few questions. If we get Stafford, is he looking for a new contract? How does neighbors' comments about the 2025 QB preference impact Shane and their draft strategy? And 3, is Cam Ward doing things at the Combine? So try to take those in stride, Jacob. First, yes, that's the whole premise of why Stafford is potentially going to be traded in the first place. He's looking to be paid compensatory to his level in the league. Right now, his salary does not put him up where he belongs based on his play. And you look at guys like Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love getting paid. Obviously, it's not apples to apples. They're younger. They're at a different point in their career. The market is different now than when Stafford was younger. But all of that said, players look at it and they say, where do I belong based on my performance? And also, Matthew Stafford is up there in age where the next contract he gets could very well most likely be his last one. So looking for a way to cash in as well as try to continue to win. Now, I do not disagree, and I'm sure we'll get into this. Is Stafford the best fit for the Giants, though? Like, would he actually succeed here? I think we have some questions coming up about that. So I'll skip down to that when somebody else addresses it. Neighbors' comments about the 2025 QB preference. Well, he's a 21-year-old, so I would hope that even though Neighbors is a great player, or let me rephrase that. Even though Neighbors is a talented, promising player, right? And I also don't disagree with his point. I think the GM and coach have to make the best decision that they know, right? It's not Malik Neighbors is not going to dictate that by what he says. Now, I do think Malik made a great point. And this is the point I brought up about why Stafford is an option in the first place. Malik was saying, we should bring a young guy in here. We do need a young guy in here. But we also need to be able to take the field in week 1 under a lot of pressure to perform with a quarterback we know can perform under that pressure, under those bright lights. And that, Malik just experienced a year where things were tough and he wasn't the quarterback and he still felt the weight of that. And I do think he makes a great point that, will that rookie QB, would it be fair to that rookie QB if you brought in, let's say it's Shedeur Sanders and let's say, Justin Fields or some other veteran who's really not going to steal the job, right? Or have the job for long, even if they're the first starter. Expecting the rookie quarterback to come right in and just win a bunch of games, save everybody's jobs, turn it around. Let's not forget, difficult schedule, competing in a division with the Super Bowl champion Eagles, a Commanders team that has taken off, is skyrocketing. Who knows what the Cowboys are going to be? The Giants never beat them. Who knows if that'll change? But so I think Neighbors brings up a good point, and I think that also points to if there's a top quarterback available like a Stafford, like that's incumbent upon the Giants to look into it, whether or not they do it or not. Is Cam Ward doing things at the Combine? He has not made an announcement. We saw kind of this PR release of Shedeur Sanders through Ian Rappaport of NFL Network that he will not be throwing or competing or working out at the Combine. He will only be doing interviews. So interesting decision by Shedeur Sanders there. Obviously there's always guys every year where, that becomes a talking point. So Shedeur is on that list now. Joey B says, okay, Pat, I don't know how I feel about Shedeur not throwing. What do you think we do at the draft what do you think we do at the draft and who are some free agents we should and could go after? All right. So let's see. Joey B says, really appreciate it. You got it. All right. So Joey B, I'm going to take this opportunity actually to tell you about some guys to watch at the Combine because that was one thing I had prepared right off the bat after we talked Stafford and Rodgers a little bit is to share with you some players that I think will be interesting to watch with an eye on the Giants specifically. One is a young man I got to meet at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. It is Texas edge rusher Barron Sorrell. Now, Barron Sorrell, obviously a standout at the Senior Bowl. He was a part of leading the Longhorns on a deep run there, having a strong season for Texas before it came to an end down there during the playoff. But Barron Sorrell is a guy who can give you, strength, motor, pass rush ability on the edge. And I'm told, and this is told directly to me, that the Giants were all over him in Mobile. So you think about, yes, they invested in Brian Burns. Yes, we have Kayvon Thibodeau on the opposite edge of Burns, but you need more pass rush help. You need more defensive linemen. You need a rotation. You need youth. You need to replenish it. Kayvon Thibodeau, coming up where there's a decision about picking up the fifth-year option. Is he going to get a new contract? How much longer is he going to be a Giant? That's a big season coming for him. You've paid Brian Burns, so he's there on the other side. He's a staple now. Thibodeau could lock himself in as a staple opposite, but either way, even if Kayvon does ascend here and he and Burns become that 1-2 punch that the Giants are hoping they were, then Barron Sorrell, a player like that with Azeez Ojulari likely on the way out, that's the kind of player that excites you. Get some more youth there, get some athleticism, and also high character young man. So that's a player to watch. And then this is another. It's interesting to me. So there's an agent for disruptive sports named Big Al. They call him Alex Beglinger, and he knows offensive linemen. He was one of several offensive line experts I quoted last season when I did a series in the Daily News, 2-part series on the Giants' issues on the offensive line and how to fix those issues on the offensive line. And Big Al just knows ball. He coached, I believe, Braxton Jones in college, who's now with the Bears, and understands, especially up front in the trenches. And he put me on a player to watch, a sleeper to watch, Jackson Slater from Sacramento State. He said that when you think about the Giants and needing to inject more toughness up front, that Jackson Slater would immediately raise the level of toughness of whatever offensive line he joins across the board. He said if he were to go into a dark alley, he would want Jackson Slater with him. Slater ranks at the moment on PFF's big board as player number 202, a guard whose rating and performance, at least according to the experts right now, improved significantly in his final season in college. Listed at 6'4", 316, but one of many offensive linemen who are scheduled to be in Indianapolis. And if there's anything, Joe, that I would say about right off the bat when you say, like, hey, what free agents should the Giants go attack, right? I look at the draft and I look at free agency, and I do not want to hear about a Giants plan that does not describe to me how they are going to improve their lines. And, listen, we know Dexter Lawrence, great in the middle. Like we already talked about the D-line. And, we know Andrew Thomas is a really good player when he's healthy, or could be a great player at times when he's healthy. We know that, you hope that a John Runyon Jr. is going to get healthy, stay healthy, have the kind of season you're looking for there. Can you get more out of JMS at center? All of those things are talking points. I'm not going to go all the way down the list. We know the names. But I don't want to hear about a Giants plan that doesn't involve understanding that their lines, especially their offensive line, are far from good enough. And how are we going to improve that? You look at free agency right now. There's options in free agency. I know the Giants have some cap space, obviously. So who are they going to attack there? Who are they going to view as as worth some coin? How much do you want to throw at the offensive line in free agency versus using that on, a DJ Reed type corner, maybe another receiver, and then going and attacking the lines in the draft? We know the defensive line, especially the interior D line, to complement what Dex is giving you there. The Giants, no depth on the interior defensive line. So that's something they're really going to need to attack. I would expect them to do that in the draft in the middle rounds, if not, starting essentially in the second round. So those are some names to watch. Also, FYI, I met Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, the wide receiver, and man, he is big, and he is kind of just carries himself with a lot of confidence, real loose. I think he had like 28 touchdowns in college, something like that. He's gonna be in those first. I think it's couple rounds he's projecting there, and I'm excited to see him play. Man, he profiles as a big time talent. FYI, if I'm not getting to your question fast enough, or if you just want to support the chat, other than supporting our sponsors, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker and elevate your comment to the top of the queue. But I plan to get to your questions all the way through. So no pressure there, but just mentioning that. All right. And Joey B said he doesn't know about Shedeur not throwing. I mean, I'm disappointed because, I'll just selfishly, going out for a full week in Indianapolis, and technically I could come home on Thursday or Friday after the quarterbacks talk, but I'm staying till Sunday because I want to see the quarterbacks throw. I want to see them perform. I want to watch them with my own eyes and make my own judgment of what I see on the field. So it's disappointing for me. The Giants, obviously, and the other teams, the Browns, Titans, if they're drafting a quarterback or looking to draft a quarterback, which I still think they want to trade out. But you look at those teams, they've obviously seen these guys throw. They've seen them in person. We know the Giants have been out in Colorado about 1,000 times. So Shedeur Sanders isn't playing to us, or me. He's playing to the teams, and he's auditioning there. So it's his prerogative, but I'm disappointed. Because I'll be honest, I get a lot out of watching these guys in person. You can't make a judgment on every single player right away when you watch these guys, right? Like, for example, Xavier Worthy, man, he was fast, but just watching him move, yeah, I could see he was fast. I didn't know how he would be as an NFL receiver as a rookie. I don't know, undersized. Yes, he's got the speed, but how is he as a route runner? You see him run some routes at the combine on the floor, but whatever. I wasn't going to make a judgment on what he could or couldn't be. I didn't know. I watched Ladd McConkey's route running, and we know he put all that tape out at Georgia, obviously. But when I watched McConkey at the combine, I was like, this guy is going to be a player, and he's going to have a big time stats right away. I could see it. I knew it. I identified it. It wasn't hard for me. That was an independent evaluation. Obviously, there were plenty of other people who felt the same way. The Chargers felt strongest, and you saw the results. Bucky Irving was a guy who jumped off. I know they're in, underwear, as they say. But last year, Bucky Irving, I'm watching all the running backs, and I'm like, before I know who's who, because you're not exactly very close sitting there as the media, I'm like, who is that? And it's Bucky Irving from Oregon. And, next thing you know, the guy's just a monster, as a rookie, dominating, catching the ball out of the backfield, an A1 number one back by the second half of his rookie year. So you do get stuff out of watching these guys on the floor. Don't let people tell you that it's nothing. G-Men, what's up? Let's get to it by addressing the elephant in the room. Matthew Stafford, what have your sources stated regarding the Giants' interest in a potential Matthew Stafford trade? Well, so G-Man, I kind of answered already, but I would reiterate the Giants should be considered a real contender for Stafford until they rule themselves out of it. Don't forget, there's also the element for the Giants of who is the leader of this team. Dexter Lawrence tried this year. I think he seems better suited to be a guy who leads by actions. He has not spoken since the season ended. He did not speak on breakup day. We still have not heard from him. Malik Neighbors is 21 years old. Great smile, has a bright future, is one of the leaders of the team based on how he needs to perform and has star power, no doubt about it. But, he's 21. Like the Giants need real leaders, real veterans at key positions who are going to kind of carry the mantle, who the Giants fans can look at and say, I believe in this team because you're leading us there. So now, is Matthew Stafford that guy? He can be that type of, leader for a team and that quarterback. I do question though, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I think it's worth saying, like, and I do believe a lot of Giants fans in here agree with me. The concern about whether if you don't want a Stafford trade to happen, I know from listening and watching a lot of fans' reactions, part of it is related to let's not give up a bunch of draft capital when we're a younger team that we're trying to rebuild this roster. We have so many needs. Don't expend all those assets plus all that money for that player, right? So that's valid. But the other thing to me is if the Giants don't have an offensive line in place that can protect a less mobile quarterback. So we already know they've had a mobile quarterback in Daniel Jones prior to this, not protecting him well enough. Matthew Stafford will not, I do not believe, will not thrive or succeed or maybe even stay healthy if he plays behind the Giants' offensive line as it's currently comprised. You would have to significantly improve the Giants' offensive line, in my opinion, to keep Matthew Stafford healthy and have that be a successful and a significant and a signing where you could be happy about what you paid him and then the performance you got out of him. Because Brian Daboll's offense is not Sean McVay's offense. Brian Daboll as a play caller, or Mike Kafka as a play caller, since we expect it's on him now. Like Brian Daboll's offense and what Kafka is running, that is not putting Stafford at the same kind of advantage and creating the same kind of mismatches that McVay has been helping Stafford do and that they have been collaborating on. So it puts more pressure playing under Brian Daboll on the quarterback. And in that sense, you're then expecting the QB to do more with a straight drop back pass game with an offensive line that is struggling to keep its one blue chip player healthy and is not protecting well enough. So, that to me, even more so than the draft capital stuff, that to me is the bigger question. Michael says, run to the podium and take Cam Ward if he's there at 3. Savage Steve says, what's up, Pat? Who do you think is going to be the next Giants starting quarterback next year as of right now with all of your hearing? And do you think the Giants like Sanders more than Ward? So here's what I'll tell you, Steve. There has been more noise and information about the Giants loving Sanders than Ward. But the consensus in the draft community and in the evaluation community is that Ward is a better player. If you guys didn't watch it already, Greg Cosell and I had a nice conversation about kind of the breakdown of those quarterbacks and their strengths. So, do the Giants, I know somebody suggested this in a previous chat, but, are the Giants content with all of that information getting out there about Shedeur, but they kind of really want Ward in the end and they don't mind that not being the focus? Who knows? That happens this time of year. I think I can tell you this, like the Giants were at Colorado a lot. Like the Giants evaluation team, Shane and that contingent, they were at Colorado several times this fall. It was not like, hey, we saw a couple games and we had a follow-up conversation, this and that. They were there several times. There was ample research in person done. And that's not exactly like your normal trip, right, out to Colorado. So their homework has said that Shedeur is very much a guy that they are keyed in on. Now, then again, last year, they did a ton of homework on these guys, including a player like J.J. McCarthy, who they were all over, and then he's on the board at 6, and they don't even take him, right? So, now I remember telling you guys that I had heard that they liked JJ, but felt like they didn't want to take him there. They felt like he was worth a later pick, which essentially means you don't like him where other teams do. So fine, fair enough. But under Joe Shane, the Giants have done a ton of homework on QBs and then not taking them. So that's another thing to remember. At this moment, Steve, I think you're asking me, so I'm telling you. But this is, listen, I could be wrong. Like I said, someone could rule us out. Stafford could re-sign with the Rams tomorrow. By the time you listen to this, if you're listening on the Believe Network on audio, he might already not be an option. But as we sit here right now, you're asking me who I think the Giants starter is next year. I say Stafford. Now, like I said, if Kirk Cousins gets released by the Atlanta Falcons, see, this is the thing. I think the Giants, first of all, they're desperate. And then second of all, there's all these revolving doors that are about to happen. So if Kirk Cousins gets released and is a free agent, right? And Stafford is a guy you have to trade for and pay that contract, the Giants could conceivably sign a Kirk Cousins, either draft a quarterback at 3 or in the second round or third or whatever, wherever they like that guy, wherever they like that player, they feel like they can develop into the next player. It's probably 3, obviously. But you can find a way, depending on what these teams decide, what they do, you can find a way to get a competitive starter on the field with your offense in week 1. That option does exist for the Giants. Now, I've been on the record, I've said this, if the Giants are looking to save money at quarterback, Jameis on a cheap deal plus the rookie quarterback, if they love that QB and they're getting him at 3, that's an option that stands out to me. I think if you're chasing a guy like Darnold, you're competing in a market you don't want to pay to. But remember, too, Stafford, Cousins, these are guys also who, it's like you would have to pay them, but for how many years really would you have to pay them? Their market is probably a shorter term market. Now, then again, Matthew Stafford, does he know, okay, yeah, I'd love to be traded and all, I want a new contract, but the Giants probably aren't going to be very good, so I'd rather go to a different team. He could feel that. He doesn't, he can't dictate that. So that's an interesting dynamic and part of it too. If Kirk Cousins goes to free agency, obviously, he could look at, okay, which of these teams looks most competitive that also can pay me, right? That's the ideal fit if you're the free agent. So, like a Saquon Barkley. So, that's something to remember. But I guess what I'm saying, Savage Steve, as I go through this thought exercise with you is I lean more towards the Giants. Put it this way. If you just thought of the Giants, forget last year, forget next year. Just think about this year. And I know you guys don't want that. I know what you want is, or what a lot of fans want, and I don't blame you, is some level-headed perspective and patience and a process approach, right? You're tired of seeing them try one thing, it doesn't work, they rip that off, they reconfigure it, then they say now the plan is this, and this was the plan all along, but everyone knows it wasn't, right? You're trying to avoid constantly in this vicious cycle where you're running on that spinning wheel, on the hamster wheel, and you can't get off of it. So I totally understand that. But if you and I, Savage Steve, were sitting here together right now, and it was just about this year, and it was how do we put the best team on the field this year? I might not have this head coaching job next year. You might not have this GM job next year. We won 3 games last year. And I don't know, who do you think they're going to play in week 1? Let's say they play, I don't know, it could be the Cowboys. It could be any number of teams. They have a tough schedule. So let's say they have an imposing week 1 game as well. You're playing the 49ers in week 1 or whatever. who do you go get then? If I tell you it's just about best team on the field this year, we have to get better. We have to come out of the gate looking like a real NFL team. And we just got rid of our best leader who won the Super Bowl for our rival. So we need some leaders in our locker room. Now, where do you go? Right? That's where I land on the Stafford thing. Plus, there's just too much smoke around it right now. Michael says, can't decide if both quarterbacks are gone at 3. I'd say take Hunter and maybe get Jackson Dart in the second, but Neighbors clearly wants a vet in there to teach the rookie. What Neighbors wants is, like I said, 21-year-old second-year wide receiver. Neighbors made a lot of good points when he said that about what an appropriate approach to the quarterback position would be for the Giants. But it's not about what Malik wants. Like he does not dictate what your organization does. That's not how this works, I think now, but like we already covered, there's ways to get a vet and a rookie in here. The problem is obviously that number 3 pick, you could really end up adding, like you mentioned, Hunter, is it Abdul Carter? You could add a player who really becomes a special addition to, to your roster, a roster that is relatively barren of talent. So, that's something to remember and keep in mind as well. It annoys me that an offensive lineman wouldn't be considered there. Like I know Will Campbell of LSU is kind of the guy that a lot of people mention when they're talking about the top of the draft, first offensive lineman taken. Who else we have? Josh Simmons from Ohio State, Kelvin Banks from Texas. Some of these other players, Armin Membu, I think is how you say his name, from Missouri. So there are some linemen ranked up there. But like to me, and I know Joe Shane hasn't had a good track run of taking offensive linemen. But like if I were the Giants and I weren't going quarterback at 3, man, if there were an offensive lineman worth that pick, right? If I wasn't reaching for that player, like if Will Campbell from LSU, the 6'6" tackle, was that player, take him, man. Take him, right? If he's the guy. I don't know if he's the guy yet. I'll be interested to find out. But the Giants are desperate for linemen, desperate for offensive linemen. I mean, come on. So that, that's a really fascinating part of it to me. There's obviously a lot of good players at the top of the draft there. Hunter, Heisman winner, incredible talent, Abdul Carter. You got the wide receiver from Arizona. You got Mason Graham from Michigan. You got, Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. A lot of special players there. Pierce, the Tennessee edge. So there's a lot of special players who can help you. But like to me, I don't know. You guys tell me if you agree or disagree. I think that if I'm going a position player and not a QB, man, I would love for it to be a nasty offensive lineman. But maybe that's not the right value there, but just saying. Michael says, can't decide if both quarterbacks are gone. Oh, you already said that. I just read that. Ken says, Giants are going after Stafford. Giants going after Stafford is Aaron Rodgers part 2. Do not do it. I would actually sign Rodgers for $10 million, keep draft picks, and use the $30 million left over for CB1 and BJ Hill. Oh, bringing BJ Hill back, huh? Yeah, I guess you do also have to get a veteran D tackle in here alongside Dex, although this is a promising defensive interior class. So does seem like a draft that you can try to restock that pass rush and that defensive line with as well. Joey B, thank you for wishing me happy birthday. Appreciate you. Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, we got a super chat in the house. Johnny says, hey, Pat, I'm still wondering how Shane kept his job. With the Giants looking to sell up to 10% of the team, I think there's actual fire than smoke to Mara not wanting to pay fired coaches and GMs. I totally agree with you, Johnny. Interestingly, I did ask Adam Schefter directly about that report because Schefter was the one who put that out there as the hiring and firing cycle was ramping up at the end of the NFL season, Black Monday and all that coming down the pike. Actually, I think it was on Black Monday as he was going over what teams were looking at, possibly doing, whether people were safe. ESPN's top insider, national insider, said that John Mara had been somebody who had spoken up in meetings about coaches being guaranteed so much money on their contracts. And when I asked Adam about that on his podcast appearance with me on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard, you can find that, by the way. Audio version is on the Believe Network, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Find Talking Ball with Pat Leonard there. And then also on my YouTube channel, PL on NFL, you can watch it. It's towards the end of the interview. You can go find it there. But interestingly enough, Schefter kind of said that from his vantage point, that was not an indication that the Giants were hard up on cash, but just that Mara was among those and far from the only one who had made that comment and remarked about how much essentially leftover or dead money that these teams had remaining to pay coaches on their contracts, how much of it existed league wide and not just with the Giants. He seemed to indicate that Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys was somebody to take a look at there, because remember, they went into a Mike McCarthy lame duck final season, which was very odd, right? It was like either you fire him off of that playoff loss or you extend him coming down the pike. And then yet Jerry Jones ends up like expiring that contract, paying it through, and then moving on to Brian Schottenheimer, right? After kind of a negotiation that went nowhere with McCarthy. And then suddenly it was just, he didn't exist as part of the Cowboys anymore. So to your point, I agree with you, Johnny. And I asked John Mara that too. And he said that's never affected any decisions they've made. But to be honest with you, heard a lot of rumors lately about this kind of thing, and by lately, I mean in recent years. And the Giants have spent money in recent years. Let's not take that away from them. They have spent a lot of money trying to make their product better. Obviously paying their GM and head coach a lot of money, and turning over the scouting staff at different points. But that said, that being mentioned, at the same time, they bring back a coach and general manager who haven't earned the right to continue running the franchise, and then lowering your standard to the point where no one can even say what the Giants are anymore because you made that decision. It's hard not to imagine that the money isn't a part of it, especially when then right after that, you hear that the Giants are selling a portion of their team, a minority stake of their team, or looking to sell a minority stake of their team. So I don't disagree with you at all. And Johnny, thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate you. All right, let's see. Who do we have up next? Kyle says the best reason for Stafford is it allows the Giants to not overdraft one of these QBs. Oh, I didn't think of that. That's not a bad reason either, Kyle. I like that. Let's see. Jim says, hey, Pat, good to see you again. After living in LA, I wonder if Mrs. Stafford wants to pack up her home and kids and move to Jersey. I know where they live, and believe me, it would be very difficult. Jim, I think here's what I would say. It has been very interesting to watch and listen to Kelly Stafford's podcast and, the tea leaves, and like listen to what she suggests, her opinions on things, and say, oh, does this mean that, the Giants or that the Staffords are leaning this way, or that the Staffords want out? Oh, they're upset about Cooper Kupp. Does that mean they want to leave? I thought the most revealing thing that Kelly Stafford said was that we don't know where we're going to be. Like, we don't know what the future holds. So let's go. So I think that did reaffirm something's going on. Something's unresolved. Something needs to be resolved and is not. So, I think it's tough, though. I think it's tough. They signed, of course, his brother-in-law, Stafford's brother-in-law, which is Kelly's brother, Chad Hall, He is now the assistant quarterbacks coach for the Giants. Does that indicate that he's coming here next, that the family's coming here next? I don't know. I wouldn't guarantee that. I wouldn't say like, oh, that's clearly means that's the reason and that's going to happen. To your point, Jim, I think there's a lot of logistics and other things involved that we don't know. So sometimes what comes out publicly, it does indicate what's coming next, right? Sometimes those little tea leaves and those little pieces of information, those morsels, do lead us to ask the right question to our next source in our next conversation. And then that leads to confirming that, and then to a report, and then to news, and then to a trade breaking and all that. Sometimes that does happen. But to your point, there's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes. I will say, though, to bring it all back to square one, Matthew Stafford and the Giants, I view as a real possibility until it's not. Ken says Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys for $140 million, now worth $10 billion. Giants selling 10% non-voting of control for control of team for $800 million. NFL is king. You can say that again. Hirsch says, happy birthday, Pat. Thank you so much, Hirsch. I really appreciate you. Dan says, Pat, my good man, do you think the combine serves as much of a purpose as it once did, particularly for quarterbacks? I think, Dan, listen, I think some players have proven that you don't have to throw, and you don't have to throw at the combine or compete at the combine on the floor, and you can still get drafted, succeed in the NFL. I remember even thinking in relation to that question, like, remember when Christian McCaffrey bowed out of his bowl game at Stanford? That always stands out in my mind. I remember being shocked by that at the time. And personally, still don't love when players do that, right, to their teams of 4 years or whatever it is in college. Like, wouldn't be my style. But again, it's hard in the modern age. It's hard to criticize these young men, their families, and the people around them. It's hard to criticize them making whatever they decide is the best decision for them, because they have all the information on what their health is, what's most advantageous. How do you build the scenario and the system to make it work best for you? Like, all of these teams are working it the way that they see fit. The league is working things the way they see fit. So it's only fair for players to take it into their hands with agents, with family members, with the people closest to them who have their best interest at heart, and try to do the same things for themselves. Now, it's not apples to apples, because there are some players who don't have the right people around them, or have people giving them bad advice, or, right, there's a lot of that. Not every situation is the same. So sometimes players get the wrong advice. Hey, don't work out here when they should, because their stock should improve their stock, but now they don't. That doesn't help them. Or, how to answer certain questions about issues that might come up in their interviews, right? Like, you need to understand how to handle it properly for yourself. Now, as far as the purpose of the combine, I think the number one purpose of the combine is, now this is not the media sexy purpose of it, right? It's not talked about as much, and you won't hear it all week because it's not the sexiest part of it. But the reason the combine exists, the reason it started, the reason that Indianapolis remains the best place for it, is the purpose is the medical evaluations. It is a central location and central, like, system for NFL teams to poke and prod and get a look at these players and their bodies, their injuries, their rehabs. And then, yes, they do have their top 30 visits, they have their interviews, and they bring guys into the building, and teams can do more evaluations there. But that is the key purpose of the NFL Combine. So I think it's a hugely helpful or important process for any player whose body is either in question because of injury, or teams are curious how the guy stacks up physically compared to what they're looking for in their measurables for certain positions, whether there's types that certain teams looking for, because not every team looks for the same thing. Some teams prioritize different qualities in certain positions or sizes than others. So, Dan, I think that the purpose of the combine really comes down to no matter what other things are shifting, it comes down to the physical purpose of it. The physical purpose of it. Like, yes, all the spectacle of it turns it into something bigger, but it's really about evaluating the players, their bodies, and yes, their minds with those interviews. Um, Although they can do interviews and have opportunities to do those types of things in other settings as well, especially on the top 30s. But listen, you saw, in the Giants Hard Knocks, you saw some of those meetings with like Daboll talking to the quarterbacks and having them on the whiteboard with the front office and the coaching staff all in the same room. I think any situation you can get into with like that is valuable, like for everybody involved. I mean, I think it's going to either rule somebody out or confirm something that you already believed. It's also face to face time. So, and as far as watching players, like I said, I get a lot out of seeing the players in person on the floor, even not in pads. And like I said, you can't see everything. Like you can't project everything based on that. Obviously, it's not a real football game. They're not in pads, so there's plenty that's left to be evaluated, desired, and film that you have to break down. But you know, like McCarthy last year, I remember. Wasn't it that he wasn't throwing as well to the left side of the field as he was to the right? And that had been a criticism of him before, but it also jumped out to me even in his throwing against air to receivers. I remember I think I was joking that he was like it was like Derek Zoolander. He wasn't an ambi-turner. I can't turn left. Um, but obviously, the Vikings are very excited about JJ, and I hope he has a lot of success there. But I do think there's a lot of purpose to it. The thing that Shedeur is shining a light on with this decision about not throwing is, and I talked to Sean Merriman. If you guys didn't check out that interview, had lights out on the podcast recently, and he was banged up going into the combine. So when he came into the league way back when, and so he didn't compete in the combine. But he said, like, even if he did it now, he thinks he would advise, players to, go take it to your pro day and turn the conditions into whatever is optimal for you. So can't blame people, but yes, I do think there's value. Joey B says you're a man of the people. So are you, Joey B. People should know that. I think people here do. Jimmy, what's going on? Great to see you. Hirsch thinks the Giants are drafting Cam Ward or Shedeur. Joey B says, Pat, that Estate 98 had me up for like 22 hours, bro. It was insane, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but wanted to give it a try. I know what you mean. So I'm a sicko because like covering hockey all those years, covering the Rangers, there were so many games that I was, up late drinking my fourth cup of coffee at 11:30 at night, as I'm sitting there grinding and going back to the hotel, having like one drink, maybe, if any, and then going right to bed, like right after I had my fourth cup of coffee in 6 hours, But people who don't drink coffee sometimes have the reaction that you did. But yeah, Estate 98 gives you that kick. Boom Chaga gives you a kick. Estate 98 gives you a kick. A little bit of a consistent, healthy, and energetic theme here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard, no doubt. We might as well pivot that into the Estate 98 trivia giveaway here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. And we have a very simple trivia question for you all tonight. How old am I? So my birthday is February 26th. So that is what, Wednesday? So, we kind of celebrated a little bit this weekend here at the Leonard household here in New Jersey because I'm not going to be here physically for it. But that's the Estate 98 trivia question of the night. How old am I? And so that would be how old am I turning on Wednesday? That's the trivia question for tonight. And the winner, the first person to get this correct is going to get a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. That's what Joey B is alluding to now. Ken says NFL will definitely have a draft lottery soon to fill in the dead time before or after the combine. They can probably sell broadcast rights for $50 million to one of the streaming services. Interesting thought there, Ken. You are right in the fact that the NFL is always looking for another way to make a buck. Also, people pay it, which is why they keep creating things. I will say my favorite new product of the NFL is all of these like cartoon simulcasts that they have. The Simpsons this year. I think it was Toy Story the year before. Like that Simpsons broadcast this year of the Bengals Cowboys game. Like I had the real game on in one room and the Simpsons game on with my kids in another, and it was awesome. Like I loved it. So I say more of that content. Simeon says, seems that Malik was saying for a young QB to not throw him to the wolves. Yeah, exactly, Simeon. He was kind of pointing out like that young quarterback is going to have all the pressure on him to get it done. And if you only have the rookie expected to take the reins right away, that'll be too much, right? No, I liked what he said. Smash that like button and sub button for the best beat reporter on YouTube, says Jacob Petruzzi. Thank you so much, Jacob. Really appreciate that. Reminder, I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and beat writer for the Giants as well. Have this Talking Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, which you can find on YouTube or on the Believe Network, on audio, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Please subscribe, rate, and review, as Jacob pointed out so kindly there. We are sponsored by MyBookie, Boom Chaga, Estate 98 Coffee, and Sal Loretta for Men, luxury menswear and tailoring. MyBookie rolled out the red carpet all year for you guys. Like I said, if you're a sports bettor, MyBookie is the place for you. And really, talking ball and MyBookie, that's the right place for you. That's the right pairing for you, because we hit almost 55% of our bets, giving out every pick throughout the regular season. My Pats picks, where I narrowed it down to like 3 or 4 every week, was just below 54% there. And then I went almost 54% as well in the playoffs, and then cleaned up both championship games right. Super Bowl was right, and cleaned up on the Super Bowl. Saquon 25 carries, Devontae Smith anytime touchdown, Eagles money line, the over on the game. I promise you, you're going to win money if you tail me over there with MyBookie. Get it started now, heading into the 2025 season. March Madness is coming up. Got to get it right. This is the place to go. You're going to get a match up to $2,000, 50% match if you use my code PATSPICKS. And go to that mybookie.ag. There's a link in all my bios you can click on as well. Also, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink right here over my shoulder. I see a super chat just came in. We're going to get to that in a second. Boom Chaga right here. Natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can pour it in any of your drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning. You'll immediately feel the difference. I feel like a post-workout like kick. Has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. They got a new packaging out now right here over my shoulder. Use that promo code TalkinBall25 or the QR code on your screen and get 25% off your first order on Subscribe and Save. And for Estate 98, as Joey B mentioned, you're going to win a free bottle if you guess my age correctly first in the chat. Estate98.com/talkinball. You're going to get 80% off your order there. Huge discount going on at Estate 98. And Sal Loretta for Men is in Midland Park, New Jersey. If you're a gentleman, you want to go and dress nice, you got an event coming up, or you just like coming correct into those big events like I do, whether it's an arrival for an NFL game or a big business meeting or a wedding, whatever it is, go to Sal Loretta, tell him Pat sent you. All right, let's see who got it right. Let's see who got the Estate 98 question right. Jacob guessed that I was 18. I really appreciate that. Joey B says 39. Undefined says 46. Tommy says health and wealth to all. Appreciate you, Tommy. Thanks for being here, man. Ken says 38. Rich says 44. Hirsch says 48. Ken says 39. Greg guesses that I'm 52 years old. Wow, a lot of guesses without a correct one. No one has guessed it correctly. That's incredible. How did that become the hardest question? Wow. Well, we'll keep rolling into our questions, and then whoever gets it right will win that free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. All right. So Duncan Hennessy says, if you were in Joe Shane's exact situation, being on a hot seat for a GM for his reasons, what moves are you making to actually keep your job long-term, and why? You know what, Duncan? Here's what I think. I think if Joe Shane has a strong draft this year, combined with making the product on the field competitive and occasionally winning, right? Like say he improved the Giants to 500 and had a good draft. That definitely buys him another season, right? So I do not agree with the people who think that the Giants just had some kind of home run draft or anything. I've never said they did. I don't agree with it. There are some encouraging players in it or with potential, but I don't believe like he had a home run draft there. But if I were Joe Shane, I would say, listen, I have the number 3 overall pick. I have a high pick in all of these rounds. It's an advantageous draft to get either my quarterback of the future or a premier position player, plus probably a player who improves either my line or my secondary, like one of my lines or my secondary in round 2. And so can you get the team to a 500 record with an improved quarterback situation and a good draft? So that to me, are you using your first round pick in 2026 to the Rams on a Matthew Stafford trade? Because if you get fired, that's not your pick anyway. You use the number 3 pick on a player who can help you now. You get Stafford, and then you rattle off, let's say you hit on 2 more of your picks in the first 5 rounds, and you get 3 true starters out of the first 5 rounds, plus you add Stafford, plus you spend some money in free agency on a corner, an offensive lineman. That's probably what I would be looking at if I were trying to save my job as well as build for the future. I think there's no easy answer to the quarterback situation. I can't sit here and tell you Shedeur Sanders is going to be great or Shedeur Sanders isn't, or Cam Ward's going to be great or Cam Ward isn't. What I can tell you is the Giants don't have nearly enough leadership or talent in their locker room. And if you're Joe Shane, yes, building more for the future with an encouraging draft this year would be great. But you have to win games. Like you can't be a 3, 4, 5, 6 win team here. Like you need to be competitive and be going in, week out, where your team actually believes it has a chance. So I hope that answers your question. Good question, Duncan. You got a real answer out of me there. All right, In2, thank you, Duncan, for that super chat. And In2 also pays in. Appreciate you. Is it me, or has there been a lot of coaching staff turnover in Daboll's tenure? I guess the Wink situation was really smoke signifying a fire. Weeks after the decision, still not confident in the Shable regime. In2, you are absolutely right about this. In fact, if you look at Daboll's tenure with the Giants, the 3 years, it has been an absolute coaching exodus. There have been several coaches throughout his tenure, even after his playoff season, there were people who left of their own accord or got fired. But then the year that Martindale resigned, it was a veritable coaching exodus from the building. I mean, there were people either leaving of their own accord, there were a couple firings, and then there were people looking to leave as well. Like Mike Kafka was a guy who tried to get out and couldn't at that moment. And they wouldn't let him because it would have meant 3 coordinators all leaving the staff. And then you have every running back coach leaving every year. What a stretch that is. What a streak. The Giants actually announced their staff changes. And then a week later or so, Joel Thomas jets back to New Orleans after only 1 season with the Giants. There's no question that is a trend. In fact, I'm trying to call up the list of people who have left, because at one point I had tallied them all as a total. So after 2022, you had DeAndre Smith, who left in a lateral move to go to the Colts. Tony Sparano Jr., the assistant offensive line coach, left for a promotion to head offensive line coach with the Colts. The Giants waited until February of 2023 and parted ways with Nick Williams, their quality control special teams coach. And then Anthony Blevins, the assistant head, special teams coach who was on Talkin' Ball at the Super Bowl, he left in July 2023 to become head coach of the XFL's Vegas Vipers. He's now back with the Chicago Bears, I believe, on special teams. Then after the 2023 season, you had Jeff Nixon, running backs coach, left to become Syracuse's OC and running backs coach. Craig Fitzgerald, the strength coach, left to become the Florida director of strength performance. Then he went to Boston College. McGahee, Johnson, Wilkins, and Wilkins were fired. Martindale resigned. Andy Bischoff, the tight ends coach, left on his own that year to become the Chargers tight ends coach and run game coordinator, essentially a lateral move, asking out and getting out and leaving for the Chargers. Kafka was looking for a job out of there, but couldn't get out. And now you have Joel Thomas this year. You have, more turnover. You have the firings of Jerome Henderson, Mike Trier. Yes, you are definitely onto something into. And yes, I hoped I was trying to point that out back when the Martindale situation occurred. And I think you're seeing it again play out after year 3 here, especially with Thomas. Also, remember Christian Dable's own son, now no longer on the staff, living on his own. Looks like we have the right answer in finally. Dan Orthside with 41. That is correct, Dan. I am turning 41 on Wednesday, February 26th. February 26th, 1984. Thank you all for playing. Wow, what a long guessing game. I had no idea. Well done. I loved Bangkok baseball here saying, Pat, you are 42 years old. Like he was basically saying, this is the answer. I'm calling it. I'm sticking to it. But no, it is 41. And Dan, so here's what we do. I'm sure you're familiar, but you're going to direct message me on Instagram, please. It's my handle there is PL on NFL, same as the YouTube channel here. And you're going to send me your address or a P.O. box or wherever you want it sent. Give me a P.O. box or your address, and I will have Estate 98 Coffee send out a free bottle to your residence. I believe you'll love it. And hopefully after you drink it or use it as a mixer in espresso martini, you order more. And like I said, it's estate98.com/talkinball. That'll get you an 80% discount. Can't beat that. All right, try to rattle through some more questions here. You guys have been awesome. This is a great chat. We are 1 hour and 12 minutes in, and we are cooking here on Talkin' Ball live with Pat Leonard, NFL Combine Preview Edition. I'm flying out to Indianapolis tomorrow night. We're having Benny Fowler and Allen Robinson, upcoming free agent wide receiver, on the podcast tomorrow. Look for that guest podcast interview. That'll be a fun one. Let's see. Jacob Petruzzi says, Pat, congrats on almost 4,000 subs. As a day one guy, it's amazing how much this channel has grown. All thanks to people like you, Jacob, day oneers, like you said. And yeah, we're almost there. I think we're one away, actually. So anyone who's in here who's not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, get us to 4,000. Appreciate you. Ken Peters says, Ed Valentine is driving to the Combine. You should have carpooled with him. Wow. Talk about dedicated. I thought I was dedicated, taking myself out to New Orleans with Talkin' Ball for the Super Bowl, man. Ed Valentine driving to Indy. Wow. Joey, not a fan of Kayvon. Yeah, I think it's a put up or shut up year for Kayvon. No doubt about it. Jacob says, Pat, no way we bring in Stafford, then draft QB at 3, right? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think it's either Stafford plus day 2 guy or Cam Shedeur and Fields Winston type thoughts. Yeah, most likely, although you can certainly make the argument, Jacob, especially now to the question earlier about Shane, when Duncan asked about Shane and what I would do. I said this after standing right there and being part of the interview with John Mara when he announced that Shane and Dable were coming back. I personally think Dable's on a hotter seat than Shane is with the owner and the organization. Now that doesn't mean Shane is not on the hot seat in any way, but is there a world where Shane gets a guy like Stafford because he trades, a future one, also drafts the quarterback high, and then tries to continue to have a strong draft and rebuild with some of the cap space and free agency. And then even if Dable doesn't get it done, now as Shane, you can look at John Mara and say, and Steve Tisch and the ownership and say, listen, I restocked our quarterback room. Our QB room is stronger. Our future's bright. Now Malik's happier. We just have to, continue to build the roster. You've said yourself, John, that you love my draft process. Let's just stick to the process. We signed Daniel Jones, and obviously I don't believe that they've stuck to the process. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. But you could say, John, we tried Daniel Jones. It didn't work. We ripped the Band-Aid off. And now that we've restocked with both Stafford and this young man, whether it's Shedeur or Cam Ward, here we go into the future, right? So there's a world where that's a possibility, that scenario I just described, I think, based on Joe Shane's leash that he has from Giants ownership, in my opinion. It is less likely, though. Like what you described is more likely, one or the other. Anthony says the Stafford talk is ridiculous. How can the team give up multiple draft picks for a 37-year-old and then draft a QB when the roster is so bad? They need to improve the roster. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, no, listen, Anthony, like I said, what I would do is, like I would be trying to make this year's team better and also be having a great draft to improve the roster. 4,000 subscribers. There it is. 4,000. 4K. Man. Milestone. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you. We've hit 4K. That means a lot to me, man. That means a lot. Thank you guys so much. All right. And we roll on here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. Let's see. But yeah, Anthony, sorry, I got sidetracked there by the 4,000 number. Got excited. I don't disagree with you that the Giants roster is bad enough that they just need to keep getting good players. Like that's why the Shane job security question is such an interesting one, because it's like, wow, they desperately need a quarterback, but man, oh man, their roster isn't good enough either. So even if they add a QB, who are they putting around him, right? These are all valid questions, and the reason why the Giants feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. Jim says, following up on Jacob's question, if the Giants draft either Sanders or Ward, would they be crazy to start him? Jim, I feel like I'm onto something in the NFL that is definitely more even than a trend, and it is this. When you draft a quarterback high, he plays for you. Like, even this year, I said at the beginning of the year, even with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, I said, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know why it's going to happen. But Michael Penix Jr. is going to start at some point this season. And I pointed that out, and there it was. And, it's partially because of the investment you're making. When you're drafting a guy that high in the modern NFL, you're drafting him to step in and compete and play. You're not drafting him to just sit around and watch. Obviously, if the Giants went the route of trading for a Stafford and drafting that quarterback, that's the one scenario like that, or the Kirk Cousins type scenario where maybe the kid really isn't playing right away. If you can get away with that, you can get away with that. But the Giants aren't that kind of team right now. Like, you're not the Kansas City Chiefs who are in the playoffs with Alex Smith while Patrick Mahomes is watching. So I don't think they apply there. Hey, Joe, I realized I completely missed a question of yours earlier. I saw you asking about it. So let me skip back to it real quick. You were asking, who can we cut, restructure, and extend to make more cap space? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to lean on our guy Dan Duggan over the Athletic on this one because he already did some of the work on this. And um, even though I will break down some of these numbers myself, I thought Dan did a really good job on it. And want to give him his credit where it's due. And these are good answers for you. He did like a 10-step offseason plan to fix the Giants. You can go read that as well. I know I'm plugging my competition, but listen, Dan's a friend. He does good work. But he said that if you cut Nacho, Raheem Nunez-Roches, and also the kicker Graham Gano, veteran kicker, you could create some cap space there. So those are two guys to look at, and then you can restructure big contracts, heavy contracts like Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, but only if you need the space. That's not exactly what you're quote unquote like. You don't need to do it at this moment. That's not a priority need because the Giants already have some operating cap space, especially like you saw Dan Graziano of ESPN putting out there that the cap is shooting up again. And I think if you're the Giants too, you've got what Isaiah Simmons was at a $5 million APY free agent coming off the books. Drew Lock was at a $5 million APY coming off the books. Greg Van Roten ended up at a $2 million APY. He's coming off the books. You got a lot of these like stopgap signings at 1 million, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 2 mil, who the Giants are no longer need to pay. And so that's obviously creating cap space there. But I think, Joe, you and I can agree that it's not exactly a need to re-sign the majority of the guys who are coming up as far as free agents of the Giants are concerned. Like Greg Van Roten, obviously not coming back based on Shane's words. I would not think Jason Pinnock would come back. He was very unhappy at the end and also not utilized properly. Didn't have a great year. Slayton, we'll see. Adoree Jackson, no. Azeez Ojulari, that would surprise me as well. Chris Manhertz is a veteran who I thought was a really steady presence for the room and gave them a lot of value when he played as far as what they were asking him to do. I would like to see him back from a strength of a locker room standpoint, as well as a guy who can contribute. Casey Kreider, same thing as a long snapper. And then, you go on down the line. A lot of guys whose contracts aren't moving the needle one way or another. Amir Smith-Marset, a returner who obviously you should bring back based on his performance there. All right, but sorry about that, Joey B. Yeah, I missed that. So I wanted to get back to that. All right, let's see. Who is next? Greg says, Pat, what do you think of TJ Sanders? Asking about the interior defensive lineman for South Carolina. 6'4", 290 listed, ranked as a top 40 player on the board for PFF as well. Really good player, Greg. Like him. I think there's a group of D tackles in this class, interior defensive linemen. It becomes a question of what your exact needs are, what your preference is, and then like the Giants, for example, Mason Graham is worth a pick in the top 5, top 6, whatever. But the Giants also have other needs, so they could wait and attack a guy like TJ Sanders in the second round, right? So that's kind of going to be an interesting dynamic, is seeing where teams go interior, because there are first round, second round, third round level talents available in this draft on the defensive line. That's one encouraging thing for the Giants and for a lot of teams right now. I think going into this draft is you should be able to get contributors and like real difference makers, whether it's depth or starters at those positions. You're mentioning one who people need to take a close look at, South Carolina. Joey B says, I guess I don't like the idea of, let's see, trying to figure out who you're asking about here. I don't like the idea of him just throwing at because you're used to those guys on the team right now. So I want to see what you can do with guys you've never thrown to. Oh, you're talking about Shedeur in the combine. Yeah. You don't like the idea of him just throwing at randos because you're used to those guys on the team, right? I want to see what you can do with guys you've never thrown to. That's what it will be. I agree with that, Joe. That's another good point about the combine. You're kind of forming some chemistry with guys on the fly or trying to feel it out, and your throws are really about your touch, your accuracy, and your delivery, and your kind of your real talent and feel for the game stands out. Like Michael Penix Jr. He was electric. I mean, what a beautiful thrower of the football he was at the combine last year. I could watch him throw a football all day. So a good example of a guy who you stand there and say, yeah, he's got it. He's got something. Jimmy says, Pat, have you heard what the Rams would want in a trade for Stafford? And who are some names you have heard the Giants having interest in free agency? Jimmy, I would say come back to my midweek. Like we're gonna have to do a midweek live chat from Indianapolis, I think, because the rumors and the rumor mill is gonna be churning in Indianapolis. At this exact moment, I do not have a list of free agents that the Giants are attacking. I think in the next 2 to 3 days, I will start to, percolate with some names, be able to share that with you. So that definitely going to work the phones and work the hallways of Indianapolis and find that out for you. And then, yeah, hopefully we can do a really live and exciting Talking Ball live, at least one, while I'm in Indianapolis. I think that'll be a great opportunity. Great opportunity to do that. But Jimmy, I think one name that really interests me, and I'm not reporting that the Giants are chasing this guy or whatever, but I'm just saying, I do think DJ Reed's an interesting name over there with the Jets. Guy obviously who's looking to be and will be paid, but the Giants just have such a need at corner. There's such a need for them at corner. Now he's not the only corner out there, but a good solid player. Rasul Douglas, also a veteran, played for the Bills. Can be a valuable guy who, he won't cost you DJ Reed money. It's another player that I would look at. But like I said, as far as reporting interest, who are the Giants chasing? I'll get more on that in the next couple of days and check for. So on X, you guys know this, but on X or Twitter, it's P Leonard NYDN, and then on everywhere else, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, it's PL on NFL. So there, plus the Daily News website, nydailynews.com/sports. Go over to Football and Giants. I'm over there. And we'll be breaking as much news, sharing some nuggets when we can. Ken says, how about bringing back Kevin Zeitler or Will Hernandez back? Zeitler's PFF off the charts and solidifies the line. We cannot go into 2025 thinking Evan Neal. Yeah, it's interesting. Zeitler, great dude, good teammate, solid player, very tough. Wouldn't hate that. We saw some of his limitations, but again, the same kind of player who goes to a better team and suddenly starts thriving and shining. Will, I know, said he's coming off an injury, said he'll be healthy by the season. Don't know if that would be a fit back here, but, they need nasty. So I don't hate investigating any nasty. Jamal says, hopefully we get a quarterback so the head coach is exposed. He isn't a good head coach, and he's been hiding behind quarterback play, but he hasn't elevated anyone on the team, especially the quarterback. To be honest, Jamal, and that's a very insightful comment. I think also listening to John Mara and listening to Joe Shane and listening to the Giants leadership talk as they came out of this season. I don't feel like the Giants are confident in Daboll either. Even when I talked to Amani Toomer, if you guys, for the record, if you guys have not watched my interview with Amani Toomer, you need to watch it. I'm sure you did if you're on this chat, but if you haven't watched it yet, you need to watch it. Really great insight from a Giants legend there. But one thing he mentioned was that they don't develop talent well. And he was pointing out so many elements of their game day operation that are just not being accomplished, like details in the game, pre-snap penalties. There's effort problems on the field. Like he was just rattling off things that now he didn't say this is all on Brian Daboll, but he did mention things that were issues up to the front office too. But a lot of the issues he was calling out were it didn't take a rocket scientist to hear it and say like, oh yeah, coaching, right? So I do feel like that's an internal thing too. Har says, what are some free agent quarterbacks who would be possible fits? Well, like I said, if Kirk Cousins comes available, whatever happens with Cousins, that's a guy I'm interested in. For sure, because to be honest, the quarterback market this year does very little for me. I personally would not be interested in a Russell Wilson. I would not be paying Sam Darnold. Dalton already re-signed back with the Panthers. Drew Lock is not. I would not think would be back here after Daboll basically throwing him under the bus late in the season. You're looking at the way I see it is there's Jameis Winston. See, even though Justin Fields is a very talented athlete, I know he is. Like I do not think that's the guy. I could see Daboll saying, "Oh yeah, no, he's got mobility, and we'll do this and that." That's not the answer to me. Jameis obviously ended up getting benched after he injected some life in Cleveland last year, but Cooper Rush is a guy who, with the Dallas Cowboys now, I mean, has beaten the Giants a couple different times. He's been in the Giants building before. Is he like a steady veteran that you bring in to compete to take the reins and then hand it off versus a Jameis, something like that? But it really is an underwhelming and as far as a whole quarterback class of free agents. So that's why I think that if Cousins hits it, if Matthew Stafford really is being traded, like those things just jump off the charts as obviously more intriguing options for what they do for your team. Joe says, what if Sanders or Cam aren't there? Do we go Hunter or Abdul? Yeah, like I said, I would like if they had judged that, I'm just using him as an example, but if they judged that Will Campbell, the tackle, was worth that pick from LSU, offensive tackle, then I want an offensive lineman over anything. But I mean, Travis Hunter is electric. He's a playmaker, plays a premier position, hard to pass up. The only thing I hate about it for the Giants is that doesn't help them get tougher on the lines, which is where you win and lose games if you're not tough enough. That's my problem. But yes, Abdul Carter would help your pass rush. A stud position player there. But yeah, like I said, man, how are they going to fix their own line? It's still the question to me. Like Amani Toomer said that to me. He says, he said something like, I think it was Amani said, people say like the offensive line isn't an issue. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Like it still is. It's still an issue. Joey says, any chatter to bringing Odell back is a feel-good story if we get Stafford. And what about Kupp? Think we get him and Stafford? A lot of chemistry there, and Odell too. That's interesting, Joe. No noise on Odell. He was out there in New Orleans. Hadn't heard anything of the sort there on that. I know he had chatted up Daboll and Shane in the past. That's an interesting connecting of dots you did there. Don't totally hate that logic. And yes, I do think Cooper Kupp probably ends up or I think there's a good chance Cooper Kupp and Stafford would love to end up in the same place if it's not with the Rams for sure. So although Cooper Kupp has has lost a step compared to what he had going in the past. There's no doubt about that, which is why he's, you know, headed elsewhere. How much do I think it would cost to trade for Stafford? Right. I think somebody asked me that as well. And I forgot to answer that. I mean, I definitely think you're talking about a first round pick. You're talking about a one first round pick plus. The question is like, it's already been reported that the Rams, I think, had a conversation with one team in the top 10 about their pick. We know Schefter told me that there's no way in hell that the Giants are trading the number 3 pick for Stafford. So, you know, I'm not saying I disagree with that, but let's just say hypothetically the Giants wouldn't trade the number 3 overall pick this year, but they would trade next year's one. Would the Rams say, okay, cool? Or would they say, yeah, we're not interested. We want to pick now, right? Because that could rule the Giants out if another team is willing to part with a premier asset, right? Because if the Rams are getting rid of Stafford, they're still trying to win, right? So if they're getting rid of Stafford, it's not like they're trying to punt on this season. It's a very interesting situation, and we all know that it's very possible that the Rams just re-sign him and that this all goes away. But there's a lot of smoke about something happening. Hard, thank you, man. Feliz birthday, appreciate you. Rich says, "Yo, happy birthday, Pat. What do you think of Russell Wilson as a possibility?" Yeah, I don't love it. I think another guy who I think without a lot of answers created for him by an offensive system, I think would end up taking a lot of sacks here. Don't love it. I mean, he was way better for a large part of the season in Pittsburgh than anything the Giants got this year out of whatever they ended up doing instead. Um, but you know, I don't love it. Barbara says several scouts have Sanders and Ward ranked below McCarthy and Nix, so be careful. That's true. Um, so Jimmy, yeah, answered that about Stafford. You're definitely talking about a 1+, or like it. I don't see how they could trade him and not get a significant one. Interesting thing is another team that's in the quarterback market, probably in the draft quarterback market, I think is not that I think I know the Seattle Seahawks. They're in like the mid first round. They have Geno, who's playing well, but that's a team who makes sense to add a young quarterback in the draft if they can. And so, do they do it in the first round? Do they do it in the second round? They're an interesting team. So I would watch them on the quarterback market. But obviously, the Rams aren't trading Stafford to Seattle, and that it wouldn't be the point there. Like Geno's a good veteran, but they also need to, groom the next guy too. HAR says, "Hey, Pat Sanders and Brady have some history. So what is the possibility of the Raiders jumping up to get him?" Um, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Shedeur profiles as a guy who maybe could be a really good face of franchise QB, but no one has come out yet and said they feel like the talent is clearly there to back it up. So that's what's interesting about this situation. It's kind of like listen, Dion is an absolute force out there in Boulder. And he and Shedeur and Travis Hunter and Shiloh Sanders and what they've built, like it's a conglomerate. It's a business. And a lot of people in the NFL media fawn over stars. And if Shedeur was viewed by a lot of teams as elite, like the reports would be falling all over him, you know? Um, I think it's interesting that that's not the case. So I don't know what that means about like how far is he going to fall? Where is he going to be available? Like I don't know. There are enough teams at the top, though, that need a QB, and the Raiders are one of them, that would not be the craziest thing in the world to me, especially like Dion mentioned, I think during one of his conversations about the Raiders, he mentioned that it was in a tax-free state. Again, thinking business, thinking money, thinking growing the brand, all that. And honestly, man, Vegas has something going. If they can get a real, like a good team going there, great atmosphere, great stadium. So yeah, I think it's a possibility. Michael says, I think that's the plan by New York Giants. If no quarterback is there at 3, they take Abdul or Hunter, but they still should have a vet QB signed before draft. And I still like Dart from Ole Miss. All right. GCN says, Pat, Stafford should get a Cousins contract. He will have to retire after 1 year with the Giants O-line. It is like going back to the Lions before they had a good line. No, GCN, I totally agree with you. I think that to me is the scariest part about possibly going to get a Stafford. It's not, for me, the assets you're giving up. It's not the money. It's would he stay healthy for 3 weeks behind the line? Tommy says, hopefully the organization one day wakes up and decides to build this team from the inside out, from the football, then out wide, trenches, trenches, trenches. It's the only way. Tommy, I mean, you said it, man. You said it. I totally agree. Joey B says, I don't think any real fan is confident. I think they are gone after 4 losses. It's hard to be confident. Listen, they need to give you a reason to be. That's the bottom line. Like, even Amani Toomer had a really interesting answer about Malik Neighbors. He said, really, really promising player. But he said, I want to see him, like he said, for him to become a star, I want to see him in order to become a star, I want to see him put up big numbers when he's not getting all the targets. So they force-fed Malik a lot this year in the offense, right? And it wasn't a great offense, but when he was on the field, Dable threw the ball to him a lot. He was forcing targets to him. He had 18 targets against Washington, whatever it was. So, Amani, I thought, made an interesting point. He just said, like, listen, he's a star when he ends up in a real offense, and then he's still getting his. I thought that was reasonable. A2 says, hey, Pat, have the Giants signed the whitest QB they can find yet? Go Mara. Ouch. GCN says, Pat, Mara needs to compare the Eagles O-line, D-line, QB, RB, to the Giants drafted by Shane. Giants are nowhere compared to the Eagles. It will take years to fix the Giants. Listen, I think if you were a general manager, wouldn't one of your like base tenets be, hey, what do I need to do to beat my rivals? I don't think that would be a crazy way to operate. Like, you need to win your division. You need to win those games. Ken says, which Giants reporter posts the best 40 time? My money is on you, Pat, or Jordan Rodon. I think I could give a good run for my money. Yeah, Jordan be in the mix. I don't know if Connor is a runner. Like, I mean, Duggan's got some wheels and is taller. So I don't know. Duggan might be able to take it. I think I could probably challenge, but I am almost all the way back from this partially torn calf I have from playing basketball. So I'm not in race shape yet. So it wouldn't be me right now. Let's see. GCN says, Pat, Sanders' brother was not invited to the combine. So the Giants draft Sanders at quarterback and his brother in the 7th round of free agent. Then Dion is the next head coach. I do think that whoever drafts Shedeur, you got to watch, is Dion going to end up being their next head coach? Obviously, there's some situations where maybe they have a new coach already. Like if he ends up with the Raiders, obviously Pete Carroll's the coach. It's not like he's on the hot seat for Deion Sanders, right? but he is older, so maybe he sets the new standard for the program, and then Dion becomes a candidate. If it's the Giants, I mean, Dion becomes an immediate candidate because Dable might not even last a year, 100%. A2 pumping his chest about Canada ruling hockey after the Four Nations. GCN says, Pat, Giants need an O-line, D-line, running back, wide receiver, tight end. They're nowhere close to the Eagles. Years to build a team. Shane has no clue what he is doing. Jacob says, Pat, is it more likely that the Giants trade for Stafford or sign Russ and draft Sanders? Man. Jacob, if I really, it would be a guess right now, an educated guess. If I like with my answer, I think, I don't know. I think it's Stafford, but that's more like a educated guess. Like I think it's Stafford, but in answer to your question, more likely. But then again, like I said, they were at Colorado about 1,000 times watching these guys, watching Shedeur. So they look like a team that they profile like a team that's going to draft Shedeur. Like there's no, like the least surprising outcome of this draft would be if the Giants draft Shedeur Sanders. It's literally looked telegraphed from the moment it started, right? So does that mean it's happening and it's obvious and yes, it's happening, or are we over or underthinking it? Or was that really the obvious option until Matthew Stafford became available, right? I don't know. I guess the best way for me to put that as I podcast this, if you're listening to this in audio and you're like, man, he's going back and forth, he can't make up his mind. I mean, they have various options and it's hard to see like Jacob, I'd ask this to you. Which one of those options gets the coach to the next season? And which one of those options gets the GM to the next season? So Stafford gives Dable a better chance. Russ Sanders seems more like the GM route, and the GM is the one in power, right? But how many games are you winning with that Russell Wilson, Shedeur Sanders combo? I don't know. GCN says, Pat, the Giants are like a triple A team compared to the Eagles. Yeah, that's generous. Raiders says, why is Riley Leonard so slept on in this draft? Just more of a runner than a passer. Very tough, but not didn't exactly profile like a clear NFL, starting quarterback, but obviously is a leader. Like you talk about leader. I mean, holy cow. Michael likes him for the Raiders. Betch says, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to let them draft a QB. Mara made it clear that he better feel better next year. Yeah, this quarterback will be thrown on the next coach. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to believe from what John says. I mean, I don't even know what his standard is anymore. And I say that with respect, but I genuinely don't. The Giants are the Cleveland Browns of the East, says A2. Carter will beg to be on the Eagles in 4 years. Be careful with Penn State guys, says Barbara. GCN says, Pat, Cowboys are $2 million under the cap. Jerry Jones is going even more in than last year. HAR says, Eagles have been on an aggressive mission through free agency and drafting quality players, no doubt. Joey B throws out DeAndre Baker's name, says he's doing well and he could get him on the cheap to come back, play for us on a flyer. Yeah, that's not happening. Barbara, making me feel good. Yes, 41. You're still in your prime, Pat. Let's go. Let's go. Appreciate that. Evan, what's going on? In2, thank you for subbing, man. You might have been 4,000. Johnny ABA says, hey, Pat, are we getting LeVar Ball with Shedeur? It turns out LeVar is a great dad who did what he had to do to get his kids drafted because he did have me fooled with Lonzo. But is Shedeur the real thing? That's a good question. Sounds like he's the real thing as like as a young man. Like people love him, rave about him. I interviewed the head of his entire like entertainment agency, and um, you know, all the people that work with him business wise have nothing but great things to say about him. Just a question of the football player, right? Like I said, the evaluators aren't fawning over him. That's why I really wanted to see him throw. HAR says deduct 10 giant years, Pat, after the years that G-men have been having. Yeah, right. Juicy Juice says, what's up, Pat? What's going on, Juicy? What's going on? Good to see you, man. Let's see. Betch wants to know what happens to Kyron Lacey, LSU wide receiver. Yeah, don't know, Betch. Good question. I'll put him on my list of guys to keep an eye on in Indy. Try to get back to you as we go through the week, and we maybe come back on the channel with a midweek live chat or when news breaks. Let's see. GCN says, Pat, has the Daily News asked you to use any AI software to help in writing stories like the New York Times did with their writers? The Times did that? Really? How did I miss that? No, definitely not. Would not do that. No, like in our business, I mean, you obviously got to be very careful with that stuff. I mean, AI you can use with like sometimes like idea generation, it comes to like podcast guest questions or like information about, like, but it's kind of like when like with Wikipedia, even if I see something on Wikipedia, I still double check it somewhere else, like when it's a tool, it's not the source itself. You know what I mean? Like you can use it, but as far as writing goes, no, I don't even touch it when it comes to writing. I would never do that. I would never do that. Thank you, A2. Congrats from everybody on the 4,000. Congrats to you guys for making it possible. Appreciate you. Evan says your channel is growing fast. Great to see. Thank you, HAR. Really appreciate that. People want Shedeur. I need a swig of water here. Just had some bourbon. Coming down the home stretch here. Let's see. Anthony says, do you think Darius Slayton will return? Well, he did arm himself with David Mulugheta, who is a big time agent, who always gets his guys paid from what I can see. From my vantage point, it feels like he always gets his guys paid. So I think that expecting Slayton to not get a solid contract would be it would be unwise to expect to be able to get him cheaply based on that agent switch. My opinion, based on that agent's track record, he usually gets top value for his guys. I think Slayton ends up playing somewhere else. Now, I will have more conversations about that. Now, that's me, Anthony. I want to be clear here. I'm not reporting anything right now. I'm just saying as we head into Combine Week, I don't know where it goes, but I'm saying I think he will get the top dollar he's looking for what his position is and his value is. Now the Giants, and I said this the other day, I think the Giants need to understand when you look at a player like Darius Slayton, who just won the NFLPA Community Award, and is a leader in that locker room, a strong voice, a guy who has been through the ups and downs in New York, knows how to handle it. I think that the Giants have obviously gotten in real trouble getting rid of or losing top players and key players, and leaders, like voices in their locker room that people will listen to and follow. And so losing a guy like Slayton would feel like another loss of a player who guys look up to. Now, again, it does have to be about performance in the end in our business, in this business, the NFL. So it is, you're paying the guy for how he plays and not just, how he talks to people in the locker room. But I'm just saying it's certainly possible he gets re-signed and that the Giants recognize his value, that it exists in both the locker room and on the field, which is something they completely missed and overlooked with a guy like Saquon Barkley, not to mention others, Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, etc. So, it's not the same situation, but I do think it makes it an interesting conversation, and we should definitely have, some more clarity on that as we get closer to free agency. But I'm just telling you, my initial answer was based on who his agent is now. That guy gets people paid, is all I'm saying. GCN wants Jameis. Listen, I would love Jameis because he is a blast. He is entertaining as hell. Jonathan says, do you think the Giants will trade for wide receiver 2 instead of signing one in free agency? Also, what do you see them doing in the safety position? Jonathan, I don't have exact names for you at the moment. I should, as we get together midweek, have more lines on free agent targets. I will say, I think at this point they have to recognize that safety is more of an important position than they adjudged with the McKinney situation and the Love situation. They do need to attack that position. Will they trade for wide receiver 2 instead of signing one? What are you giving up? I guess you would be implying that you're giving up a draft asset for a wide receiver. Yeah, I guess it would depend on the situation. That could conceivably be the way that you attack it. I mean, Joe Shane showed last year in the trade for Brian Burns that whether it's wise or not, like he will use a premium draft asset for a top player available via trade. So it is in Shane's precedent to do that. I'm sorry I don't have safety names for you, but I will have more on the free agent pool for you guys later this week. Tommy's got a lot of trenches players listed that make an impact, no doubt. Giants must build the team the right way from the football, then out wide. Sanders will run for his life like he did in Colorado with this O-line. Excuse me. All right. HAR says, I believe Dable will be gone after this year. So do I. Free agent in college QB talent is crap right now, says Simeon. Joey says, what's going to happen with Tommy Cutlets this offseason? Practice squad, active roster, released. I mean, he's an exclusive rights free agent, so you can bring him back, on the cheap. That's a good question as far as where does it go. I mean, I think his bread is buttered, in New York based on his brand, his story, all that. So from his standpoint, you have the marketing dollars you're making on the side. You ride this story out as long as you can. I would think, but although I know he wants to play and believes that he can play and provide value and win. But that remains to be seen, Joey. I mean, he had more of a standing on the roster and on the team this year than most people would have thought coming off of the previous year, including myself. Although once he was back, did not surprise me that they were running it back. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like Tommy, but you have to admit, obviously, for their quarterback room to improve, they need to stack options ahead of him. So at best, you would hope that it would result in him being no more than the third quarterback. That said, you had him as the third quarterback this year and you jumped the number 2, the backup, to make him the 1. So having him as the 3 even would, in my mind, make the number 2 unsettled based on how this coach has handled and this regime has handled it. Directed by Justin LA says, happy birthday, Pat. Love you. Let's go Giants. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. Something nobody mentions is if they get Stafford, this is Dayball's chance to prove he can win, says Ezeki. If he can't win with Stafford, then Mara has his answer. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, if you're Brian Dayball, I mean, Matthew Stafford has to be the player that you want at that position right now, right? Like, if you're Brian Daboll, you're trying for Matthew Stafford, I would think. No doubt. Big Dash says, give me the kid that's fighting to make his own path out of the shadow of his dad. All right. Big Dash, what's up? Michael says, I get that, Ezeki, but if I'm running New York Giants now, no way I give up a first rounder this or next year. So it's a different veteran quarterback and hope Cam is there at 3. Ridiculous Nicholas. Oh, good name. Says the Giants need to study the Eagles and draft and build a team to beat them. Beat them, you win the division. Yeah, that's how I would act if I was coaching the Ravens against with the Steelers into my division, the Bengals with the Steelers and the Browns, the Steelers with the Ravens, the Rams and the Niners. Like, right, you go down the list. I mean, you need to beat your rivals. Joey B doesn't think the Giants will draft a black quarterback. That's why the Stafford thing is even a convo. He said 2 draft picks are black, free agents like Fields and Russ too. They won't take any. Joey B, I appreciate you bringing that up. The Giants' history with rarely drafting or starting black quarterbacks and taking so long for them to even start a black quarterback obviously is there. I personally think the Stafford issue is a topic because he's the best quarterback potentially available. Also because, like I said, a locker room pretty devoid of leadership right now. So I think of those things. But if they were to not draft a quarterback in the first round this year, what you said would certainly be a part of the talking point as well, as it's the history. E-Man Perry says, Shane and Daboll too busy trying to make this Buffalo. We're in the NFC East. Look how the Eagles won. Take notes, Shane. Nicholas says, draft Shedeur Sanders, TJ Sanders, Raheem Sanders, and Shiloh Sanders. Boom. Super Bowl window open. Love it. Hey, Brett, what's going on? Brett says, we need something drastic to keep this fan base. That is Stafford. Let's see. Yeah, Brett, the team needs something drastic too, right? GCN says, Pat, people need to stop with the no state income tax that is only one state. Players have to pay income tax in all their states with a tax based on the number of games they play in the state. That's true, but all the other money you're making in that state is no state income taxed. It's more than just a salary too. But you're right, GCN. It does get spread out for those different games. A2 says, sorry to break it to you, but AI is taking over everything. Oh, yeah, no, I mean, it's a useful tool, obviously. I'm just saying, as far as a writer, no, the answer to that question was no. I do not touch it as far as like creating my articles. Joey B says, we are going into our 3rd season now with this live. And guess what, Pat? I still don't have a hat or a T-shirt. No, Joe, you're right. I promised gear last season. Then I promised it at the end of the season. I still don't have it. I'll tell you what. We will do some sort of either giveaway or event sometime before the start of this coming season and have gear available, whether it's for purchase on the channel here. Maybe we'll have some gear giveaways during our lives and then also a shop that you can buy them at. But I definitely have to get that going. I got the logo. I got the ideas generated and all. I just got to execute it. So it's coming. But thank you for the push. Brett says, Pat, this might be weird, but I think Shedeur's neck is too long. If you Google him and Cam Ward from behind comparison pick, looks like a free rusher injury waiting to happen. Little Mike Glennon action. Eagles are so deep, Ken said, that their big signing, Bryce Huff, was inactive for the Super Bowl. Get Carter and do what the Eagles did to Kansas City and the Giants did to Brady in '07 and '11. Tommy says, how much sleep has Mara actually gotten? He probably has nightmares with Barkley going over 2,000, then wakes up when he sees Quadzilla hoisting up the trophy. Not going to lie, Quadzilla deserves it. I know. It's really astounding. I want Shedeur. He's got the arm talent, the accuracy, the nuts to play in New York, and the swag. I'm tired of our quarterbacks looking bad, says Joey B. Brett says, happy birthday and happy springtime, Pat, over the cold. Yes, Brett. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that. A2 says Stafford is not a drastic solution. Okay. Brett says, I don't care if the quarterback is purple. We are all tired of losing. Joey B thinks that Talkin Ball gear will help the channel. Yo, I'm ready. You don't got to convince me. I'm just doing 50 things at once, so that's been falling by the wayside. But Joey B, you're giving me the push I need. I appreciate that. Such a diehard. Joey B turning out for the Talkin Ball get-together and fan event in Pittsburgh this past season. We're going to have to run that back somewhere else. GCN says, Pat, what happens if the Giants and Jets do not want to play in Giants-Jets Stadium after the lease is up? Oh, geez. I don't have the answer to that right now, but I wouldn't want to play there. Joey B says, man, I'm going to sleep good tonight after a Talkin Ball with Pat. I needed this, bro. Me too, Joey B. I'm glad to be back, glad to be rolling. And I will say this, I don't know how it's going to break out, but in Indianapolis, stuff starts to cook. And, Joey says Vegas versus the Raiders this next year, I'm going. Ooh, yeah, no, Vegas is a great trip. I'll see you out there for sure. But I needed this too. And I'm so grateful to you guys being here. But like I said, in Indianapolis for the Combine this week, you'll see I'll have some reports coming out. I'll have some nuggets. I'll have some information. I'll be chasing scoops, chasing info, have some notebooks in the daily news. But also we should come back on here this week. Maybe midweek. Maybe it'll be Wednesday. Maybe it'll be Thursday. I don't know. Wednesday's my birthday. That'd be a tough night to schedule a live chat for. But whenever the news drops, if there's something big enough, we'll go live. We'll do it. I'll do an impromptu live in the middle of the day if there's a big trade. I don't care. Stay tuned. More coming here. Like I said, on Monday coming up, podcast with Allen Robinson and Benny Fowler. We're going to go over their NFL Combine experience back in, I think it was 2014, and they're going to take us behind the scenes of what the Combine was like. And then that'll be a lot of fun. We'll talk about free agency. A-Rob's a free agent and all that. So that'll be a lot of fun. But reminder, we are brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, My Bookie, Estate 98 Coffee, and Sal Loretta for Men here on Talkin Ball, live with Pat Leonard on the Believe Network and on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. My Bookie, remember, it's mybookie.ag, and the promo code is Pat's Picks. You'll get a 50% match all the way up to $2,000 on your first deposit. Like I said, almost 55% hit on against the spread picks of every NFL game this year. Almost 54% in both the playoffs and on Pat's picks, and rolled through the Super Bowl with the Eagles money line, the over, Devontae Smith anytime touchdown, Saquon 25 carries when the over-under was 21.5. So go to MyBookie now, make that deposit today. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally feel a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Place your first order with this code, TalkinBall25, or access it through the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% off your first order on Subscribe and Save. Like I said, new packaging, same great product, was a huge hit at the Super Bowl on Radio Row. Looking forward to seeing some orders roll in. I think you guys will love it too, so stay on that and get some Boom Chaga going in your life today. Start feeling the difference. Boomchaga.com, TalkinBall25, QR code right here. Also, Estate 98 Coffee. It's estate98.com/talkinball. 80% off there. If you go there and order, you'll love the product. I think it was, what was it? Dan, I think maybe won the trivia today. Go send me your address. I'll send you a free bottle. We give away a free bottle every live chat with a trivia question. And it's a natural specialty coffee concentrate. You just pour basically like a tablespoon with some water in a glass. You can turn it into a hot or iced coffee in 10 seconds. And it's a great mixer for espresso martinis. So go get that now at estate98.com/talkinball. And last but not least, Sal Loretta for Men, luxury menswear and tailoring in Bergen County, Midland Park, New Jersey. Go there and tell them Pat sent you for the best tailoring and menswear really that I've ever seen, but definitely in the area for sure. All right, Joey says Thursday might be better for a live chat. We'll see when the news drops as well, Joe. Sorry about your loss there. We will hopefully bring you some juicy news on the Giants and really around the NFL this week. Duncan says, I just want the combo to change to what needs to be done for success. I've heard enough of people explaining the ways will likely fail. Yeah, Duncan, I think we've talked a lot about that today, right? And I think we're going to continue to spin that forward. I do think the Amani Toomer interview was a really good one because it was part diagnosing what's wrong and then part here's how to fix it. So I agree with you, Duncan, and that's the direction we're trying to go in. You won a 40-time race with all the reporters, GCN. Okay, we'll see. I got to get this calf right. George says, Pat, final thoughts. What do you think is going to happen this offseason? What are the chances the Rams and Giants make a deal? I think it's a possibility until they rule it out. That's what I would say, George. And George says, happy birthday. I appreciate you. We'll get into free agents during the week after I get into Indianapolis and start working the hallways and the bars and the restaurants and the phones more often as we get into the rumor mill season, churning up big time. This has been a 2-hour, 10-minute and counting, 11-minute and counting live chat. And it's a banner day. Got my birthday. And at the moment, look at this. Big 41 coming up. And we're at 4,001 subscribers. So some nice synergy there between our chat and our growing community here on Talkin' Ball Live with Pat Leonard and our celebration here coming up. Duncan says, tonight was great. I just meant in general, but thanks. Yeah, no, thank you, Duncan. I appreciate you. And 40. George says I'm going to take 41 shots in the bars. Oh boy. Then there won't be any live chat, so I can't do that. But hey, special shout out and thank you to Johnny, Duncan, and Into for their super chats, and then to all of you who helped drive the chat. Joey B wants me to post my Venmo. We'll send money for an old fashioned for your birthday. That is not necessary, Joey B, but I appreciate you offering that. Your support and your engagement in this conversation is enough. If you missed the beginning of our chat with my talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Rams and Matthew Stafford and the Giants and everything in between, I will post this audio version of this podcast. You can listen to it first thing in the morning on the Believe Network. That's on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. It's just Talkin' Ball with Pat Leonard. You can find it there. This is Pat here from New Jersey on the eve of my flight to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, signing off, saying so long, and look forward to reconnecting with you guys throughout the week on social media with news, information, and analysis on the Giants and on the NFL from the NFL Combine. See you guys later, and thanks so much.